This is Kyle McCord, and you're listening to Austin, Felix, and Matt on the Devy Debate.
Welcome to the Devy Debate. All right, boys. Are we ready to debate? Austin, you tweeted something, girl. You tweeted your running back rankings. Explain yourself.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast. You jumped up and...
That's Austin Nace.
Who is going to be that guy? And for me, Bijan Robinson is still going to be that guy.
Back to the ground with Robinson, who spins and then tries to bounce it. A stiff arm, another one as he rides it, keeps his balance. They're going to say he stepped out, but
I'm Felix Sharp. I know you didn't think that we would get through this episode without mentioning the name one Zach F. Wilson.
Screener draw. Oh, Wilson is going to uncourt for the end zone, and he drops it in beautifully. And it is his roommate, Dax Milne, on the touchdown.
That's Matt Bruning.
G. Scott Jr. Obviously, I waxed poetic about him on the last episode, so I won't do that again here.
And it's Dobbins Fields on the carry. Watch out. Justin Fields. Hello, Columbus. 51 yards.
Bruning, are you ready to go head-to-head with me?
I am.
Got to get my popcorn out here. Hold on.
Got to continue. I got it. Kyle McCord is going to end up winning the job. He's going to be rated higher.
Well, I'm not nearly as passionate about what I'm about to talk about.
Our apologies to Kirk Street. We ran out of time. We'll get him rescheduled soon. And for Matt Bruning and Austin Nace, I'm Felix Sharp. Good night and good luck. It's 9:30 Eastern time, the only time zone with more boyfriends than Taylor Swift. That means it's time for the Devy Debate, brought to you by CampusCannon.com. Austin Nace, Chris Moxley, Matt Bruning, and Felix Sharp on a totally concocted version of tonight's show. We're going to fix last week's mock draft. We're going to answer whether we'd rather have J.J. McCarthy or Jayden Daniels, and has Austin changed his mind on either Carson Beck or Ladd McConkey? But we start with coaching news that is breaking around the country, or should say has broke around the country. I think, Austin, we should start with Jimbo Fisher. According to Billy Lucci at TexasAgs.com, Jimbo is out. I don't think that this is a surprise, especially after last season, and they haven't really turned on any success this season. Jimbo is out. I don't know. What's your reaction? Should we care? What's your reaction to this news?
Yeah, I think the timing is interesting. You know, I thought he might go to the end of the season just, because at this point it kind of is what it is for this year. I know signing day's coming up. I know, there's going to be probably a decent coaching carousel. I'm sure they're trying to get out ahead of both of those things. But other than that, I don't think this is surprising at all. And I feel like it's kind of a lame response that I don't have much more of a takeaway than that. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do in terms of keeping recruits. I believe they have at this point a top 10 recruiting class for next year. Do they maintain that? I think a lot of that's going to depend on who they go out and hire, how much of the staff stays around. Bobby Petrino, that offense really hasn't been the problem this year overall on a week-to-week basis. So do they try to keep him around? I'm interested to see exactly what direction they go here. And I've seen the short list of coaches. I think, maybe we'll discuss a little bit of that. I think Mike Elko makes the most sense. But is he a splashy enough hire for what they want to do, considering they went out and got Jimbo the first time, pried him away shortly after his national championship at Florida State, and then, a couple years later paid him all that money? Like, is Elko a sexy enough hire for Texas A&M? I'm not sure. So I'll be interested to see if that's the route they actually end up going.
That's a good name. And obviously it's the most popular name, right? He was the defense coordinator under Jimbo at Texas A&M, so he's familiar with the program. I don't think that he's a sexy enough name either. I mean, he's done a bang up job at Duke, turning around a program that had kind of languished in the last few years. He made great coordinator hires too at Duke. So, like, I don't want to just put that all on him, even though he has done an awesome job. I think he's the guy you hire if you want to really overhaul the program and just say, from the ground up, we need rebuilding. I need a year 0 and then 4 or 5 more. Maybe that's Mike Elko. And I think he would be a great hire too. Like, that's not me saying he wouldn't be. I think there are sexier hires. Dan Lanning's thrown out. I don't think Dan Lanning's going there. I've heard Lane Kiffin. I don't know that Lane Kiffin's going there. I don't know. The reason that Texas A&M was able to get Jimbo at the time was that he was basically heading towards divorce with Florida State anyway. And so it just kind of like all manifested itself at once. I don't really have a strong take on his firing, to be honest. I mean, he's going to make $76 million for like sitting in his backyard by the fire. Like that's really it. Maybe don't give guaranteed contracts to coaches who have one good year in the COVID season, which was an anomaly for like everybody. Like the Indiana and Tom Allen, like they were awesome, and he's been kind of bad ever since. That season was so weird. I don't have a strong take. I think the coaches being thrown around are going to disappoint. Whoever the eventual hire is at Texas A&M is going to disappoint probably everybody at Texas A&M. But that doesn't mean it's going to be the wrong hire.
I don't have a strong take either. I think, for our purposes, for anybody tuning in for the first time, we don't follow like the legacy media model for talking about college football. For our purposes, we really care about players. And so, Matt, the question is whether or not this is going to have an impact for Evan Stewart, Reuben Owens, if you care about him, Noah Thomas and Le'Veon Moss and who's the quarterback? Yeah, Connor Wegman. Connor Wegman. I was searching for that name, Connor Wegman. He just hasn't played in a while. Anyway, that's what we really care about. What's your take on whether or not it'll affect any of them? Because that's the other thing we should know is that with the coach firing, a transfer portal opens immediately for those players.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the interesting thing. We've already seen a couple guys that we don't necessarily care about on the fantasy side of things, and probably realistically even the football side of things have already entered for the Aggies, but do they lose any big-name players? We've already seen, I believe one of theirs, either a high 4-star, 5-star offensive tackles come out and said, well, I'm committed to Texas A&M, but my recruitment is now open. So that, to me, pretty much says, yeah, I'm not really staying at Texas A&M, but he's saying
is that kid right in Texas?
I don't remember exactly where he's from, but I just saw him post something about it on Twitter. And so that's where I was like, to me, that says like, oh yeah, just because I don't want to get like killed online, I'm staying, but I'm really not staying. I'll be gone here. I'll wait till the new coach gets hired and use that as my reason to leave. For Connor, Evan, Le'Veon Moss, Reuben Owens, I really think it just depends on who the coach is that they bring in. I mean, I would not be surprised if they don't go with a more offensive kind of coach, a guy that really sticks out to me for multiple reasons that I know Austin didn't say. I don't think Chris said. I heard some of the names he said, because he's not going to be in a conference next year. We've seen what he's done with arguably bad quarterbacks and rebuilt a quarterback this year. One Jonathan Smith of Oregon State. You take him. He's done a really good job of building defenses there as well at Oregon. Oregon State done a really good job of recruiting for a program like that, getting guys into the NFL. You put him on a team like Texas A&M, and I think everybody here would say that's not a sexy hire, right? You hear Jonathan Smith, most college fans are Texas A&M fans, but who the hell is this guy? It's not going to work out. I think with Texas A&M's money behind him and everything, and the way I think he recruits as it is, might actually be a really good hire for a team like Texas A&M, because we've seen he's not afraid to go out. He usually hires very good assistant coaches. So he's a name that I think is a very intriguing one, especially with the fact of, like I said, Oregon State doesn't technically have a conference next year. So why not make the jump? I'd hate it for Aiden Childs' sake, unless Aiden Childs goes with them, but then he would have to sit for one more year behind Connor Wigman. But I think it would be a very intriguing fit for Texas A&M. But right now, I think it's too early to say what it means for any of those players. We just don't know who the head coach is going to be, offensive coordinator, because I don't think it's going to be Petrino. So whoever they bring in, I think is going to affect them more than Jimbo leaving.
Can I say one thing about the players that are currently there? I'm not sure their loyalty was to Jimbo Fisher. I think their loyalty may have been to bags of cash. So I'm not sure a lot of them are leaving, if I'm being totally honest. I mean, that 2021 recruiting class,
Yeah.
was very heavily bought. So are they going to enter the portal and miss out on some of those agreements? I'm not totally sure. I think they might just stick it out, especially the high end guys.
I think we knew that firings could come in the SEC because next year they're adding Oklahoma and Texas, and you have two, high profile head coaches and Brett Venables and Steve Sarkisian obviously more so coming into the conference. I don't know that you can just recruit. Sam Pittman can recruit against those two programs. I think it makes it more difficult. So you want to have a sexier name. I think Dan Lanning is a sexier name, but why in God's name would Dan they would just have to pay him a boatload of money, but Oregon is a better job than Texas A&M, and they're going to an easier conference. I don't know Dan Lanning, and I don't know what Dan Lanning is making, but they'd have to double or triple his salary.
He's making 7.5 in the idea. I think Nate Marquise threw this around in our Slack that they would offer $15 million, so double his money. But
doesn't it get to a point where you can't even spend that much money? I mean, I can't spend $7 million in a year.
Well, I think Oregon. I think he's staying in Oregon. I think he'll just parlay this into a really nice raise, considering what he's done at Oregon. I just don't understand the big name that's going to go to Texas A&M, knowing how much influence the boosters have. It's not a place that you can win. It's a place they think they can win, but you can't actually win or haven't won in the past. What is
if you can recruit
that upside there of a coach?
If you can recruit
just generational wealth,
but why Lanning as well with the success he's already had at Oregon? Now he's going to the Big Ten. It's not like he's still in the Pac-12. He's going to be in the second power conference. He outside of Ohio State, Michigan, they're probably the third favorite right now going into the Big Ten next year to win that division or be in the playoffs. It's 12 teams. Why do you want to go to the SEC on a team that's not? I shouldn't say they're not good. That Jimbo has done the least with the most. He does have good players. At least he recruits good players. They just don't do anything. But why jump ship with a team that you've already built over the past 2 years? He's already killed it in recruiting the past 2 years at Oregon. I don't think that's going to hurt him anymore going into the Big Ten. That name to me makes no sense whatsoever. It's not like he won't leave. He won't leave. Kirby Smart's moving on. That makes more sense than him going to Texas A&M.
But it would seem like so. I don't know how Jonathan Smith looks like he's in his 50s. That Texas A&M job seems like who's the up and coming 37-year-old head coach?
It's like Elko.
I very much disagree with that.
Really,
I think
it's going to be
coach. Texas A&M presents some very difficult issues that a lot of other schools don't, and I think the biggest one is actually because of their biggest strength, which is the cash. Because I think players know that they have the money. And so if a player is going to go there, they're going to demand that money. And I think that ends up attracting a different profile of player. And I'm not saying that this is, it is in general, I think, a bad thing in terms of it is not a positive attribute that some of these players possess that are going there. But I think it presents some very unique challenges for a coach. And I don't think a up and comer is the guy to do that. I think you need to who would be amazing there? Urban Meyer would be amazing there. He is the exact kind of coach that they need with a lot of past success, a guy who knows how to recruit, a guy who has shown that he can deal with a lot of personalities in college football. I am not advocating for that hire, but I'm saying that's the kind of coach that you have to bring in there. You would have to bring in him, a Kirby Smart, a Nick Saban. There are maybe 6 or 7 coaches at any given time that fit the profile of that program. I'm just saying.
Can I offer one more? I don't think Urban Meyer's a bad one.
So it sounds like top 3: Urban Meyer, number 2 Mel Tucker, number 3 Art Briles. Art Briles is that's a Texas A&M's top.
Jeff Levy
got criminal court.
What about someone who he just left the college ranks? He's back in the NFL, but we've seen can handle pressure. He brought Penn State back from the Paterno scandal. Bill O'Brien.
Oh, Bill O'Brien?
takes over Texas A&M. I think there's a better chance of that than Urban Meyer. I would
That'd be a
upset the cheerleader that he
horrible
was hitting
hire.
on a couple weeks ago. In
None
the
of
middle of
none of those Belichick guys are good coaches.
Or-
They're
or-
terrible.
I mean-
They're terrible. Like
according
I
to
think Urban
Mox,
is
it
like
won't
human
matter.
perspective.
Whoever goes is going to
Yeah.
fail at Texas A&M anyway. So why not go get the bag if you're Bob?
Yeah, I just don't think Urban is likely. I really do think that he's retired. I mean, he would be a good hire if you are willing to accept the baggage that comes along with him, which obviously Texas A&M is willing to accept, considering they have DJ Durkin and Bobby Petrino on staff. So like they don't really care for morals at all. Yeah, I mean, this job is attractive, right? It is one of the best jobs in the country, given the resources that you have available to you, but you have a very meddling booster community. So you need to have, like Austin said, someone who has experience. I don't know that they're going to get
You
that
know
guy
what?
this cycle.
What about Jason Garrett?
Oh my god! Yeah, how
That might be the
if there are
worst name that's
A&M
offered.
fans
right, so
listening to
far.
this, they're going to be very angry with us. Throwing out these names: Bill O'Brien, Jason Garrett. Y'all are wild.
I think Jonathan Smith was actually.
I'm just thinking. I was like, who's
and
a
same with
Texas
Elko.
guy who has Texas roots? And I'm like, well, I mean, Jason Garrett played there and coached there, so he's not doing anything.
What do you think
other
about
than-
Jeff Traylor, UTSA head coach? I've seen him thrown around. I just don't think he has the experience.
Yeah, I think the experience issue is going to pop up for a lot of these names that are kind of, on the cusp type candidates. I just think you have the possibility of just getting totally overcome by the wave that is Texas A&M football with everything that comes with it if you've got a young coach in there. You know who also be actually really good there? Hugh Freeze would actually be excellent at Texas A&M. In my opinion. Like that's like an experienced guy who does not care about like the rules.
I agree.
at
I
all.
actually agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, none of these people care about the rules.
What about
I mean,
who's
they
not
got
on?
Hugh Freeze. I think Evan Stewart stocks. I mean, he's already like wide receiver 2 for us.
Well,
but, I
Evan
mean,
Stewart
it would
tweeted out today. I don't know if anyone saw that. He said something like, "I just woke up and saw this," and had like some like one of those like emotionless faces like emoji posted. I don't. Again, like Evan Stewart is probably one of the guys that actually is like good enough on that team that it doesn't matter. He'll probably get cash wherever he goes. But I do think we could be surprised with a name or two that jumps in the portal. I'd be interested to see.
And you said today we should just let the cat out of the bag that
Shit. My bad.
we have been recording earlier. We're recording on Sunday night and then releasing Wednesday, which is like the worst thing that you could do in media. But, we're trying to give ourselves a little bit of a break during the week. So, if something happens between now and then, that's why. Okay, Boise State is letting go of Andy. Is it Avalos or Avalos?
Yep.
It's Avalos. I mean, we care about Boise State. We care about the Mountain West. I mean, it's a conference that at the very least puts up a lot of points. And there's Eric McAllister is there. Ashton Genty is there. Taylon Green is there right now. I mean, Chris, I mean, we that's a team that has some guys that we care about.
Eric McAllister entered the portal last week. I expect Ashton Genty to. I don't think he's going to be at Boise State next year. I think that he's a Power 5 back if he wants it, and I think he should. I mean, he's a really good player. I mean, the Avalos tenure was kind of doomed from the start. I just wasn't sure about the hire in general. He had a lot of connections to the university, obviously.
Well, Kellen Moore was getting a lot of buzz about potentially getting that job.
And he might have not been a bad hire either. I'm going to be pretty interested to see who they bring on, because this is the first time that Boise State has fired a coach this millennium, which I forgot who posted the stat. It might have been CFB numbers, but I will credit you later on when I am able to find the tweet. First time that they have fired somebody in the last 24 years. People have just like retired or gotten new jobs from there. So it's been a coaching hotbed. I don't know. This year was like, I did not like what Boise State did on offense this year. Like they minimized Taylon Green's offense, brought in the son of Greg Maddox, and he's been starting, and I don't think he's done a great job. It's just, yeah, Avalos, I thought could have been fired last year, and he was saved by Dirk Cutter coming back out of retirement. So, yeah, not surprised.
Yeah. So we'll see if we get some movement from there. And here another one bites the dust in Happy Valley at Penn State. Mike Yurchich. Everybody's shaking their heads and not helping. Yurchich.
I think it's Yurcich, but you're close enough.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
He's you're doing great, sweetie. He is out, according to John Sauber at the Center Daily. I don't know that that's necessarily, shocking news that they made a change there, that James Franklin made a change there. Matt, I mean, we saw the game against Michigan, and that offense was just kind of stagnant. And you've got what we consider to be an elite talent in Drew Allar. What do you think about Penn State firing its OC?
I mean, I think this is just something James Franklin did to kind of save his own hide in a way, because I don't think the offense is going to change at all once they bring in a new offensive coordinator. He's always been, what's the word I'm looking for here? Very conservative in his offense. I mean, they're the 50th ranked offense overall, 82nd in passing, 44th in rushing, which is honestly kind of sad with that offensive line and having Nick Singleton and Katron Allen behind you. I can get, I guess, kind of Drew Allar struggling a little bit. They don't have any real weapons for him, but it's interesting because we see Drew Allar as like not living up to his potential. Maybe some of that has come from how highly we valued him, but like he actually, I believe, has passed the ball down the field a little bit more than I expected. He just hasn't been successful at it at all. Like I think he's only completed one attempt over a certain amount of yards. I was trying to pull it up here. So over 20, I'm sorry, he's completed like 8 of 29. It was not pretty compared to some of the other players in his range. He's been really good in the short and behind the line of scrimmage, but struggled going deep down the field. Again, I don't know. It's not a lot of attempts. It's overall 25% of his attempts have gone deep. So maybe it is they just are not allowing him to do it. There was a clip. I'll have to see if I can find it about a journalist asking James Franklin if they would just let Drew Allar open it up. I believe it was before the Ohio State game. If you guys, Jordan Richards actually sent it to me because apparently the guy asking the question sounds like me. And so he thought I was the one goading James Franklin into giving an answer. We were laughing about that. I'll repost it on Twitter, but like we see quarterbacks do that all in college football. Like sometimes they just try and take that shot deep. And James Franklin's like, no, we don't ever coach our players to do that. It's all about this and that. Like,
that is crazy.
That's insane. Think he's going to bring in an offensive coordinator that still allows Drew Allar to do that. He's never done that since his time Penn State, even at Vanderbilt. He does not run a pass-heavy offense that is willing to take chances. He runs a conservative offense, plays defense. I don't think the firing is going to change anything for Penn State.
This is like Ryan Day not letting Justin Fields run the football. And we were going to have this later on the show sheet, but I mean, we might as well talk about it now. What I see is missing from Drew Allar's game compared to what he did in high school at Medina is giving him like the opportunity to improvise. Like that was one of the best aspects of his game is what he did off platform and, creating on his own. But I also like if there's a lot of, short passes. This offense has been very horizontal. Even the deep shots that they're taking, it seems like they're on 3-step drops where you have man press coverage and, like the wide receiver gets open immediately and they throw it. There's not a lot of long developing plays. You think about the stretch plays that have play action that, Peyton Manning ran or that the Shanahan's run, those long developing play action plays where you have kind of a post and a long crosser. There's nothing like that. I want to see that. I want to see 5-step drops. I would like to see rollouts, stuff where he's not just sitting in the pocket. Like the best thing about Drew Allar was that he was this creative playmaker in a 6'5", 240-pound frame, and they are using none of that ability. You talked about he's throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. It's a lot of behind the line of scrimmage. It's a lot of RPO where the ball comes out fast. I don't know how you can they're trying to coach to not lose the game. And they're still losing to Ohio State and they're still losing to Michigan because of the way they're playing. I don't know if it's personnel or if it was the play calling or some combination of both, but they are severely restricting what it is that we saw Drew Allar do on tape. I've talked about it on here a lot. I saw anticipatory throws in the middle of the field where he's throwing to a tight window with 4 or 5 defenders around. I saw him throw, sidearm scrolling, rolling through the left and right. This is a player, like, if you give him the opportunity to show off that arm, you would expect a player that's 6'5", 240 pounds to have a big arm, and he does. But they have not given him the opportunity to show that off. He kind of showed it off against Maryland and Indiana, but that's about it this year. And I don't know, Austin, Chris, I'm wondering if we're overvaluing Drew Allar. I don't think that we are. I still think that he's the talented player that we saw on tape in high school.
So I know you have not seen Parks and Rec, but there's a scene.
I have seen Parks and Rec. That was Parks and Rec Community. I've got all of those shows down. I've not seen The Office, but I've seen Parks and Rec and Community.
Okay, so there's a scene with Henry Winkler and his daughter, and she says, "I have done nothing wrong ever in my life." And he says, "I know this and I love you." After she messed up like a billion things prior. That is you and Drew Allar. He is missing like 90% of his throws late behind. Like, I don't think the offense has set him up for success at all. The skill positions are kind of pretty bad. Receivers are terrible. I don't like the way this offense is called at all. But like, he deserves some of the blame, and you just basically said, "No, he's perfect. He's my sweet child. I would never blame him for anything." And I think he has not been good this year, like even in the context of the offense. So I just want to put a little bit of blame on Drew Allar. Yeah, I think we were overvaluing him based on where we had him preseason.
Austin, you're just shaking your head. Do you have nothing to add to this conversation on?
I think he's not been processing very well. He's really late on a lot of throws, and I'm wondering how much of that is his fault and how much of that is the staff not getting him prepared correctly. And I just really don't have a good answer to that. But I've watched a lot of Penn State this year critically because I hate Penn State as a Pitt fan. And he just has not been very good. Even the games that he was really productive, that West Virginia game, about 25% of his production came on a broken play on a throw that should not have gotten to that receiver, and it did.
Which is exactly what you want from Drew Allar, some broken plays.
That's not what we want to see from Drew. We want to see him work something. And
he's done nothing wrong his entire life.
It's not there. But I'm not giving up on the kid. I think I'll be interested to see who they hire. I do think he should consider leaving. I do not think he will, but I think he should. And I know we're going to have a longer Penn State discussion later. But
no, we're getting it in right here. I mean, we're getting it right here. So, I mean, if there's anything that you want to add, I mean, their record against Michigan and Ohio State, or James Franklin's record against Michigan and Ohio State, is 4-16. No, we don't really care about that, but they're not, they're not winning against the big boys. And he needs a Jahan Dotson. He needs a Parker Washington. He needs a Mitchell Tinsley, quite frankly, on that team. And they just don't have it right now. By the way, did you see Sean Clifford tweet, quote, bet? Did you see that? I don't know what that was. That felt like a shot at.
It was 100% a shot at Michigan. Yeah, because they thought Penn State was going to win.
It felt like a shot at everybody who said Drew Allar should be starting over him.
No, it was a shot at J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, because all the Michigan players were posting bet after Harbaugh got suspended. You said that Drew Allar needs a wide receiver. There was a school that was trying to get him to come to them right before he signed his official letter to Penn State that's got a lot of really good wide receivers.
Yeah, but they left him hang out there for a long time.
Portal.
They left him hang out there for a long time.
Oh, they did.
They offered him.
But if Allar really wants to leave and he wants a good offensive line with a lot of wide receivers, they were looking at him. They might be going to the transfer portal for a quarterback. I'm just saying.
He's so Chris, I agree with you. He's so broken. He needs to go to a place that will fix him and develop his confidence. If he goes to Ohio State, he's going to be in a quarterback battle, no matter who's there. Even if Kyle McCord's not there, he's going to battle with Aaron Noland or Devin Brown or somebody. That like he needs to go to a place where if he did transfer, where he's going to be the starter and the program is like investing specifically in him. And I can't even think of what place that would be off the top of my head. So
I mean, I know where he could go. And I know you're going to love it again, and you're going to steal this take. Why not just go to Washington with Kalen DeBoer? I mean,
you're going to make Felix change his pants now.
I mean, I was trying to think of a place that's, geographically where he's from.
Washington's in the Big Ten, my friend. They'll be playing near home all the time now.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we keep sending these big arm quarterbacks to Kalen DeBoer, and I mean, I like that one too. I want to see who's starting for Washington next year. Is it wrong? The answer to this question is yes. Now, it's wrong to have Drew Allar ranked ahead of JJ McCarthy. But Matt, you're saying no, it's not wrong to have them ranked that way today.
Drew Allar ranked ahead of JJ McCarthy? No, I'd still keep him ahead of JJ McCarthy. Personally. Also, Alabama could be another interesting place for him to go, personally, I think. But go ahead, Mox.
If you believe in Drew Allar turning it around and you don't think JJ McCarthy is a first-round NFL pick, which I'm not sure I do on that second part at least, I don't think it's crazy. Because if you're just like JJ McCarthy is not going to provide for you at the collegiate level, probably the production that you need. So you're basically just saying who's the better NFL prospect. Right. It's probably JJ McCarthy right now. And I feel like pretty good in saying that. So yeah, I don't think it's wrong, but depending on your faith in Allar, it's not crazy. I would just take JJ McCarthy, but it's not crazy. It's just,
JJ, first of all, JJ McCarthy's in his third year. I also wouldn't be shocked if JJ McCarthy went back to school. Like that wouldn't particularly shock me. We always have one of those seniors, or draft eligible players that heads back to school. I wouldn't be surprised if JJ McCarthy went back to school. Because they don't have a guy next year.
Just make a point. Again, I just pulled up one league here. I don't think there's any special QB scoring here. Drew Allar is QB 37 on the year, averaging 26.1 points a game. JJ McCarthy is QB 44, averaging 24 points a game. So you can't even make the argument that JJ's been better college-wise. So again, I'm still taking Allar because he's been better for you in C2C leagues, and I don't think I understand he's having a bad year. But so is J.J. McCarthy last year. He was not having the year he's having now, and everybody is now ready to crown him a first-round pick. Like, what if Drew Allar turns it around and plays just as well, if not better, than J.J. McCarthy is this year? You're going to say he's a first-round pick because we all agree he's got the tools to do it. So I'm not bailing on him in his first year starting. He's, in my opinion, has more talent than J.J. McCarthy. He's outproducing him on the college side of things. I just don't see any reason why J.J. McCarthy should be ranked ahead of him personally.
This feels like Quinn Ewers last year. Like, he's the player, he's the talent, he's the 5-star. We know he could put it together. I see similarities between us keeping him propped up.
I never had Quinn Ewers propped up, but Drew Allar is our consensus quarterback 3. JJ McCarthy, our consensus quarterback 11. So, okay. That's supposed to be all the coaching news. I think we got through everything there. Sam Pittman, Arkansas, as of this recording, Sam Pittman has not been fired. Chris tells me that they're sending him out for media day on Monday or Tuesday, and he's just going to get questions about his job. They're sending him to the slaughter.
If he's not fired during the season, he'll be fired in the offseason. He's gone.
Yeah. All right, housekeeping here. Hey, help us get to 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's your first time tuning in. We play Campus to Canton League, so if you need more information on what that is, I'll put a link in the description box. If not, it's in the description box of a lot of the other videos. So check out that link and check out campustocanton.com in general. From depth charts for all 133 FBS teams that are continuously updated. You can get that at the website. You can get rankings for, 600-700 plus players on the college side for your Campus to Canton Leagues player comparison charts. So let's say, for example, you want to compare, Evan Stewart's college trajectory to Devontae Adams' college trajectory there at Fresno State. You can do it at campuscan.com. We are starting the freshman guide. This will be our third annual freshman guide to get you ready for those freshman and supplemental draft guides or supplemental drafts for 2024. So be on the lookout for that. And we are all right. We haven't gotten a rate and review in a while. Let me know with a 5-star rate and review if you care about us pre-recording and then releasing on Wednesday. Because the other option is if we are going to record on Sunday to kind of give ourselves a break during the week, we could just go live on Sunday when we record this. So that's another option. Let us know. Pre-record, live, it doesn't matter. Let us know. Well, then watch like some huge news happen later in the week. And we're sitting here talking about So while we will not be live on Wednesday night, here on the YouTube channel, because this is pre-recorded, we will be on Dynasty Trades in 5. Popular show in the Dynasty space. I have no idea why they want to talk to us, but Clay asked to have us on. So we will be there on Wednesday, Dynasty Trades in 5, November 15th. It's either 8 or 9. I don't think we have a set time, but me, Chris, and Matt will be on that show. So check it out. Hopefully they don't ask us any questions about the NFL. And Chris is shaking his head. All right. We talked about Penn State a little bit. Let's get into some more Week 10 stuff. So we talked a little bit about J.J. McCarthy. I saw him compared to Ryan Tannehill, and I don't know if that's a player comparison or a play style comparison, because when I think of Ryan Tannehill, I think of a guy who's not going to carry the load for the team on his own, but he can be a complementary piece to a very strong running game. And that's exactly what J.J. McCarthy is doing at Michigan. Austin, J.J. McCarthy, franchise quarterback, yes or no?
No, I still have him as a day 2 guy. I feel like a lot of the throws that people pick out as saying, this is an NFL throw are throws that I would expect any, player that is talked about at all as a NFL draft prospect to be able to make. I don't. He's kind of fringy where I don't think he's a great improviser. I think if you can really harass him, he really, really struggles in the pocket. I don't think he's great if you're just saying 3 steps, hit that back foot, get the ball out. I do not think that's a strength of his. I just watch him and I think, what kind of offense are you building around him? It has to be this Michigan style offense where you're just running the crap out of the ball. They didn't. What was the stat this weekend? They didn't pass the ball after 7 something left in the second quarter or something like that.
1 second half pass.
Yeah, he had 10 total dropbacks, 8 total attempts in the game.
I mean, that's just what he is. I saw, and man, Dane Brugler probably knows more about football than forgets more about football than I'll ever know. But he was saying, Michigan, if you had Drake May or Caleb Williams as your quarterback, you would have done the same exact thing. And no coaching staff would have done that, because they know that there's not going to be mistakes coming out of those guys like J.J. McCarthy is still very, very prone to at times.
Matt, J.J. McCarthy, is he a franchise quarterback?
No, I don't think so. I agree with Austin. He probably goes day 2. He's still he's an athletic quarterback. He can make plays with his legs. I think he can play out of structure. And I will give him that he has played much better this year than I even expected. But I think what he's done and who he's done it against has been wildly overrated. Penn State is by far the best defense he's played. He did nothing. And I do think that the Ohio State game will be another big test for him. If he goes out there and proves that he's going to gain a lot of favor in the draft community, and then we'll see what he does in the playoffs. If he gets a chance to play against Georgia, I think that'll be another real test to see what he's made of. But so far this year, when I look at the teams that he's played, there's not one good defense on that list outside of Penn State, and he went 8 for 7 for 60 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That's not a franchise quarterback. It's not.
Mox, what's going to be the over-under on that Ohio State-Michigan game? 41.5 or something like that? 43.5?
45.
Yeah,
probably
something like
that. Yeah, 2 really good defenses and 2 offenses that I think you can say a couple negative things about. I watch him attempt like 8 passes this weekend, and I'm like, all right, understood the game plan. I actually thought they adjusted really well in this game after their first couple drives when they just got nothing. They're like, we're just going to load up the offensive line and run down your throat, which they were able to do successfully. But on principle, can I take a first-round quarterback who threw 3 interceptions against Bowling Green? I don't know. I will say this about JJ McCarthy, though. My big knock on him, it's always been a big knock on him, is that he cannot operate inside of structure. Like, he needs the play action to succeed. He's been much better than that this year. Much better. I still don't think he's a first-round guy. I just don't. But day 2, yeah, I think he can do it. He's one of these big-time throws.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's one of these guys who has the physical tools and the recruiting pedigree, but everything is not there. I'm surprised that people haven't talked about JJ McCarthy potentially switching positions at the next level, to be honest with you. Like, if JJ McCarthy was black, they would be talking about, oh, he's gonna switch positions. That's what people would be saying. They wouldn't be talking about him going in the first round. Austin, I want to ask you about some of these other guys at Michigan, because they play this style that is hard to tell what their projection is going to be at the NFL level. So any of these other Michigan guys, are they going to be top 24 players at the next level? Like, if you're holding them on the college side of your campus to Canton League, do you feel good? Like, hey, I'm getting a great asset at the next level. I'm talking about guys like Blake Corum, Roman Wilson, Donovan Edwards, Colston Loveland. Do you see them having that sort of ceiling in the NFL?
I can see Corum getting there just because, as we talk about the running back all the time, basically, that middle 80% of running backs in the league can operate in lead an NFL backfield for a few weeks if they need to be. So I could see Corum getting there just based on that fact. I find Roman Wilson interesting because I do think he has an NFL skill, which is just his speed. And I think, quite frankly, Puka Nacua is not an amazing receiver, but he's in an offense that's letting him just do exactly what he can do. So if you put Wilson in an offense that's, is kind of asking him to occasionally work deep, crossers, things like that, just kind of, because I don't think he's great at getting himself open, but I think, his speed is good enough that a team can work around that. So I do think Wilson going to the right spot could be interesting. Edwards, I've pretty much lost all faith in at this point. And I think that's kind of the risk that we were taking drafting him this offseason, was that, we said, well, he's getting better at learning between the tackles. He's learning how to do that, but he hasn't progressed there at all. It's been 3 years, whatever. And I find Colston Loveland to be potentially the most overrated player by the C2C community. I have watched him several times and just find nothing there that I find interesting at all from the NFL. Nothing. He's small. I don't think he's overly athletic. I don't think he has great ball skills. I watch this guy and I'm like, what? I would rather take one of these 250-pound guys that are just way more projectable. Colston Loveland, I have no interest in him at all.
Would it surprise you, Chris Moxley, to know that actually J.J. McCarthy has had more play-action plays this year than last year? I just looked it up. Not by much, but he has actually been in play-action more this year than last year.
That's not too surprising. I'd be interested to see what his grade was outside of play-action if we're looking per PFF.
I will let you know here in a second as I answer this question. I, for the most part, agree with Austin. I don't want to say I'm completely out on Donovan Edwards. I know he has had a very bad year, but just from what he can do receiving wise, I do think that he could be a very good punt or kick returner in the NFL as well. That's the kind of player that I personally bet on getting to that top position for fantasy, a top 24 player, because he's got that receiving upside. I do think he's got obviously the size and speed as well, that if he takes, let's just be honest, if he ends up, and San Francisco drafts 5 running backs every year anyways. If he ends up in a place like San Francisco, or if he ends up in Miami, he's a guy that will end up there. And I believe in his skill set a little bit more than I do Blake Corum, but it would be one of those two, just because there's so much attrition at the running back position. I don't think Roman Wilson gets there, and I'm kind of with Austin on Loveland. I don't really like him at all. So
for the record, I don't think that Donovan Edwards is the style of back that those Miami systems run, but I do agree with you that he could be a top 24 player because of his pass catching ability. Like it's just if there's a player that from Michigan that needed to enter the transfer portal, it is Donovan Edwards, because he has a skill set that could be utilized. You're just not going to do it when you have 3 tight ends and 2 fullbacks on the field and you're running, I formation power. Like that is not Donovan Edwards' game where you're going to get the most out of his game. So he needs to be in a wide open system, a shotgun system, somewhere where he's going to catch 30, 40 balls in a season.
Did you see the run he had where he basically ran to the back of his offensive lineman while there was like 4 or 5 yard hole on the right, and he just didn't hit it early enough, or else he would have had a touchdown? Like there were multiple plays that game where I was like, this dude has just no vision.
But you know what? That comes from reps, though. That comes from reps, like understanding where the seams and creases are. And it's hard to do that if you can't get in a rhythm. And he's the 1B, or actually he's the 2.
He's the B
for that team. Yeah, he's the B.
Yeah.
Michigan has a receiver that profiles a running back that profiles almost exactly to Donovan Edwards coming in. And I would if I could get that kid on the phone for 2 minutes, I would tell him you need to be looking elsewhere. Although, in fairness, that whole staff might be gone after this year anyway. So,
yeah.
All right, Matt. Another running back that had a major event this weekend is Jonathan Brooks for Texas. He's out for the season, and it sounds like it. Well, no, actually, it's been confirmed that it's an ACL injury. What do you think the implications are for him as NFL draft stock, maybe potentially coming back? But then, I mean, they've got CJ Baxter behind him, and then the class before that, it's Jadon Blue, who, seems like he fell on, got in the doghouse with that team. But what do you think the implications are overall for that running back room?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it gives Baxter the chance to show us exactly what this Texas backfield is going to look like next year. I think even if Brooks comes back, with as good as Baxter has already looked, I would not be surprised if he takes the reins and is the starter next year. Maybe there's some kind of split between him and Brooks still, but Baxter being the one, I think there's a better shot that Brooks just ends up coming out. What is it, 4 months before the combine? So maybe he doesn't test at the combine, but I would imagine he can get pretty close to being somewhat healthy, or at least healthy enough to run by a pro day later in the year. Does kind of like something like that for NFL teams. He's projected by enough of these NFL analysts to be the top running back taken. I don't think there's any reason you come back unless you find out you're not going day 2. And from everything I've seen, they're projecting him to go day 2. So I expect him to go, which gives them Baxter the chance to prove it. What is going to be interesting for me is that we as a company were fairly high on Jadon Blue a couple years ago. He's really not gotten a chance to show that. I think now he does. He'll be the 2 behind Baxter. If he goes out there and produces well, I think it gives him a chance to enter the transfer portal and possibly be the starter next year or somewhere else, not at Texas. I don't think he stays there, but it's going to be very interesting. We loved Baxter. He was one of our, I think actually he was our only tier 1 running back this year in the guide. And Jadon Blue was a tier 1 the year before. So it'll be very interesting to see how those two split it up. But I think Baxter's by far the more talented back. And I'm excited to see what this. Texas has everything in front of them. We could legitimately see CJ Baxter playing not only a Big 12 championship game as the lead running back for Texas, but if they win in the playoffs against a very good team as well.
They're not going to the playoff, but
if they win out, yes, they will be. They'll be going to the playoffs.
Yeah,
if they win out, they're going.
Is in the playoff. Yeah, I tend to agree with Matt there. I will say this about CJ Baxter. I thought he's looked excellent this year in limited time.
Man, we're going to have to argue about that one. I think he has not looked very good this year.
Oh, I think he's looked really good, especially in the last 3 weeks. I think he's really come on and been a much better player. I think Jadon Blue.
One of those runs was that fake tush push toss. So.
Yes, which was there was literally zero skill on his behalf on that play. If people have not watched this play, he had to make it was literally a 2v2. He just had to make one guy miss, and he was gone. There's nobody within 20 yards.
It was the Kansas State game, and he got 54 yards on that run. Over half of his yards came on that one run.
Sounds like he made the guy miss, which is all you're asking.
He did technically, yes.
Jadon Blue, I think the dream is dead there. I really do. He didn't really play a lot when Brooks went down. I just think that,
Jadon Blue is going to end up at SMU with Jalen Knighton and Kamar Wheaton. He's going to be in.
I was going to say Texas State. He's going to end up in San Marcos, running, taking over Ishmael Mahdi.
Joke's on you guys. Jalen Knighton's done after this year.
Is he really?
I think
Has
so.
it been that
He's been around
fast?
a long time. I'm pretty sure.
No, he and Don Chaney came in the same class, right? At Miami. Don Chaney has a. I think he and Chaney were in the same class. They were in the same.
That sounds right, but I'm not positive.
I think that's right. Austin is Jadon Blue. I mean, I don't know. I feel like people have like dropped Jadon Blue, but would you buy low on Jadon Blue now?
Really quick, Knighton has at least one more year of eligibility.
Yeah, I think he
there you
does.
go.
Yeah.
Would I buy low? No, I don't think you need to spend anything for him. So no,
You
I
don't-
wouldn't
you
go
really
buy
don't.
low.
I'm off waivers.
You really don't. I don't know. That was a stupid question. I'm sorry. It was a dumb question.
No, I mean,
Texas will be interesting in a few months because I don't think Ewers is leaving. So you're going to have Arch, Murphy, all there, and then there. I feel like there's going to be some domino that falls. Either Arch or Malik Murphy or both could leave. I don't think Ewers is declaring for the NFL draft. And then you've got Worthy. He's going to be declaring. I have to imagine Jordan Whittington it is done. J.C. Sanders, he's going to be going to the NFL. Adonai Mitchell and Jonathan Brooks could be gone. I mean, it's going to be an interesting offseason for Texas with potentially a new set of skill position players.
Whittington has another year if he wants it, by the way.
Oh my
He
God.
redshirted in 2019, COVID year 2020, and then 21, 22, 23. So
He seems like a guy who will exhaust his eligibility.
Yeah, he does.
I mean,
What's he good? What else
he's in
is
a
he gonna
rush to
do?
go sell insurance. I mean,
All right.
Cordell Patterson, Dollar General Cordell Patterson.
So wait,
Yeah,
what are we
saying,
looking at that in that wide receiver core? It's Jonte Cook, Jordan Whittington, and who would be the third? First of all, get
They'll
DeAndre
bring in a
Moore on the
transfer, I
field.
think.
I'm about to say probably DeAndre Moore. Yeah, wasn't Whittington getting like day 2 draft buzz last year before he decided to come back? Am I misremembering that? The
I feel like
best
that was 2 years
blocking
ago.
wide
I
receiver?
feel like that was 2 years ago.
I'm pretty sure it was last year. Best blocking wide receiver in college is what I was hearing everywhere.
Sounds like a Chicago Bears draft pick.
I got to imagine Isaiah Nayor. Does he have a year of eligibility? He probably does not have eligibility yet.
Well,
I'm trying to think of
last
what
year
that
he
wide
lost.
receiver core is going to look like next year.
They're going to bring in a transfer for sure. I think they'll bring in a highly touted
Devin
G5
Stewart?
or
Oh, G5. Okay.
G5 or the potential guy like Mitchell who is not an offense that's going to be super productive.
I could bring Corey Brooks back over. You know, Sark loves going over to Alabama to get those guys who have failed there to come over. Just saying.
Yeah, Ja'Cory Brooks has fallen way
I mean,
off.
I think it's gonna be Cook, Whittington, Moore. Maybe they get Ryan Niblett.
I don't
in a
think it's
little
going to be more. Moore hasn't gotten any time this year, if I remember correctly. I don't think he's a threat to be a year 1-0.
he ain't just a threat. He's going to be a year 1-0.
Yeah, he is. He's not playing any snaps.
Hey, but he was, if I remember correctly, he was good on both sides of the ball. So I thought that was like he might end up in the cornerback line for Texas. Because DeAndre Moore went to Los Alamitos also, right? Didn't he play with Malachi Nelson?
For a brief time. He played at like 4 different high schools.
Yeah.
There is a lot of other like underlying when we discussed through whom we were like, I'm not sure this is
He's taken the what's his name path.
he was also committed to 3 different schools, I believe. Like this
the
dude
dude
is
from
all over the
Alabama.
place.
Yeah,
he
what's
was
his name?
committed
From
to
Alabama.
Louisville for a long time, and then ended up going to.
Oh, I
Texas
remember he
after
was
that.
committed to Louisville because he was committed to Louisville with Pierce Clarkson.
Ruben Owens.
No, Pierce Clarkson.
And Ruben Owens.
Who was
Just-
who's
yeah,
the
Ruben Owens,
Alabama
yeah.
wide receiver? Who's
Just
the
to give
Alabama
you-
wide receiver who just transferred to Texas who went to 4 different high schools? Who was a problem everywhere. And then his last high school was IMG, I think.
Oh God, I know who you're talking about. I can't. The name is right.
And
off.
somebody
can't I
still
remember
has
his
him
name?
ranked.
He got kicked out. He got kicked out of school for beating.
It starts with an A. I know it starts with an A. God, somebody's screaming in there.
Jai Hall.
Yeah, there we go.
Ajay Hall.
There we go.
Yeah, Ajay Hall.
Man,
Just-
that name totally just left
Just
my
to give
brain.
you guys an
It's
idea
hard. It's hard.
of how little DeAndre Moore has mattered, they don't even have him in PFF. Like that's how. Like there's even wide receivers in here who have not taken a snap, have made their names in here. He is not even in PFF to look up.
That is not true. For
I'm
the
looking
record,
at it right now.
Me too. I've got his thing up.
Well, I must be looking at the wrong things. I'm looking at the D's and Moores, and I don't see him anywhere.
How did everybody spell DeAndre's?
Wait, yes.
That's
How
the
did
question.
Matthew?
I
how
typed
did you
in
spell
more.
his name?
I put in more. That's all I put in because I didn't want
It's
to.
2 O's, Matthew. It's 2 O's and an E at the end. And an E at the end. Did you say you put
M-O-O-R-E.
2 O's?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened this week. 2 O's.
DeAndre Moore has played 27 non-special team snaps this year, 6 since week 5.
Is that bad? That sounds bad.
Not great.
So for those who are not familiar with DeAndre Moore, I know when I watched his tape, he was playing at Los Alamitos with Malachi Nelson, and he's a very good after the catch wide receiver, but he played both sides of the ball. And I really like yak guys, and he was a yak guy. Am I misremembering that, or does Austin, is that, because somebody?
No, yeah, he was like kind of,
That's
Parker Washington-ish, DJ Moore, that kind of, player. Yeah.
So, okay. All right, that's Texas. Okay, let's move on here. Another Week 10 performance that was just bananas was Jayden Daniels. And I was trying to think of Jayden Daniels, he went for 372 passing yards and 243 rushing yards against Florida. When we talk about the quarterback 3 in this class, his name is getting thrown out there. I've seen mock drafts putting both him and J.J. McCarthy there. I was trying to think of the last time that we talked about Jayden Daniels on this show, and I cannot. I mean, it was probably like 2020, like when we first started, when he was at Arizona State with Herm Edwards, his coach. Herm Edwards was his coach. Yes, when he was getting coached by Herm, he is our consensus quarterback 54 overall. Matt, he's your quarterback 91, by the way, and we haven't really talked about him. I don't know. Matt, I don't even know what to ask here.
He's going to be a day 3 draft pick.
Yeah, he's probably is.
I mean, look.
And you should probably draft, like if you in Dynasty, you should probably draft him.
The last time we actually probably talked about him, and Austin, I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to throw myself under the bus here as well. I distinctly remember a year ago, 2 people on the show talking about how bad LSU was going to be under Ryan Kelly and that Jayden Daniels probably wasn't going to be that good. And that's been a really bad take. Obviously, LSU has been a lot better than we expected. They had a chance to win the SEC last year. We saw what Mike Denbrock was able to do with one Desmond Ridder. He got drafted in round 3. He started at times for Atlanta. Now, he hasn't been good, but I don't think it's unfair to say Jayden Daniels is a much better athlete than Desmond Ridder. And I would argue he's actually probably a better passer, at least more accurate than Desmond Ridder. He may not have the arm that Ridder has, but he's definitely more accurate. If we've seen a guy like Desmond Ridder get into the NFL and actually make starts, I don't see why Jayden Daniels won't. He, to me, doesn't fit in the like Malik Cunningham. I'm trying to think of what other quarterbacks have gone in the NFL and then they've like tried to make switch positions. I know you're about to ask a question. I'll just answer right now. If you're asking me to take him or JJ McCarthy, I'm taking Jayden Daniels because I believe in what he can do as a rushing threat into the NFL. And again, we care about fantasy points. Like I think he will score me a lot more fantasy points than JJ McCarthy ever will at the NFL level.
I think that he could be this class's Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts was a 5th-year senior, went to the Senior Bowl. He had a good season when he went to Oklahoma, but I think because he didn't have the success at Alabama that you would hope for, in some respects was written off. And it seems like, Austin, the same type of story is being written for Jayden Daniels. I don't know what Jayden Daniels looks like as a passer because I myself is just like, all right, well, old player, is good as a freshman, but I stopped watching him when he transferred to LSU. I'm doing the same thing with DJ Uiagalelei, by the way. My perspective of them is what they did at their last program. Maybe that's a mistake.
Yeah, I think, when I was doing drafts this year, I was looking at some of those, DTR, like Aiden O'Connell, Clayton Tune, some of those guys that you think with the right opportunity can certainly jump in and maybe take on a job for a little bit. And I do think that Daniels falls pretty squarely in that category. I do think he'll get drafted a little earlier than those guys. After his freshman year, he was in the same class as Sam Howell and those guys. I thought he was at the very top of the class with those guys. And, quite frankly, thought that his upside was higher than them. I just think the one thing that I think he does really well is I think he's a pretty freaking good deep passer. Like, I really like when he goes deep, and early in his career, he wanted to do it way too much. He was like, I'm going to freaking throw this thing 60 yards at least twice a drive. And it seems like he plays within himself a little more now. I still think the slight concern with him, with as much as he rushes, is that he's not built like Jalen Hurts. We've seen Lamar manage to avoid, for the most part, kind of those hits, and maybe he's more in that category. But I think especially because Jayden Daniels, at least once every 2 games, will jump directly into a 300-pound lineman and just let them destroy him. I think some of those things are a little concerning. But yeah, I actually think like the Hurts, kind of written off, maybe come back, is a pretty good analogy. I don't, and I think I agree with Matt, the JJ McCarthy question. I think Matt made a great point. We're trying to draft fantasy points here. We're not Trevor Lawrence. We really like Trevor Lawrence. And from like an EPA perspective and all these things, he's been excellent. But like, he ain't scored me fantasy points right now, which is really kind of hurting me. And I do think Jayden Daniels can score fantasy points. So I do think he's really, really interesting. He's not my QB3. I think we all know who my QB3 is now. We discussed a little bit. I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later. But he probably slots in that group right after that. And actually, you know what? I think I would take Jayden Daniels over Michael Penix and Bo Nix and, whoever else. But I think, Michael Pratt, I think I would take him over all those guys.
So I'm not there, for what it's worth. I see a guy who has a very slight frame, who's excelling in an offense with 2 really good wide receivers. I don't think he's making special throws. I think he's completing deep, certainly over expected, but not to a degree short and intermediate that I'm like, oh, this guy is special. I mean, do y'all think he's a round 1 pick? Because I certainly don't.
No, I don't think he's a round 1.
No, I think he's I think he's a day 2 pick. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes. I mean, like I said, Desmond Ridder. Who is the other one? Malik Willis. They both went like late 3rd. I would not be surprised if Daniels is a mid-2nd round pick. So real quick, Mox, as you brought it up, I actually disagree with you on him being impressive deep. I didn't really think that until Austin said it, and I just looked it up. As someone who spends a lot of time on PFF and looking at this stuff, he's completing 65% of his passes over 20 yards. That's almost unheard of unless you're like playing in a offense that just does that in G5 level. You do not see this in people in SEC. 65%, just to show the difference. Last year, he was only completing 38%. You talk about short and intermediate. Okay, short and intermediate, he's actually completing 75% of his passes. Like, he's having his worst percentage is actually coming in the 10 to 19 yards. Everything else is like above 70%. He's 60% right there in the medium, 10 to 19 yards. But still 6 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, 700 yards. Like, he's been, like I said, you rarely see quarterbacks with a 65% completion percentage over 20 yards. Just again, we were just talking about Drew Allar's earlier. His was 38%. JJ McCarthy's is like 20-something percent. Jayden Daniels, 65 in the SEC. That's pretty damn impressive.
One of my favorite things. Oh, go ahead, Felix.
I was going to say there is some actionable advice here with regard to the quarterback position, because look at this year's class. Michael Penix Jr. is probably going to get decent draft capital, even if it's day 2 or early day 3, 6th-year player. Kenny Pickett, 5th-year player. DJ Uiagalelei is probably going to exhaust all of his eligibility. Is having the best seasons of his career later in his career. Jake Haener, a 5th-year player. Jayden Daniels now, a 5th-year player. Like, these guys are discovering their rhythm. I mean, after they've had a lot of experience playing football. And I don't think the NFL is going to fault you for that It's like, all right, he can play now. Just because he figured it out late doesn't mean that he can't transfer those skills to the NFL level. So, I mean, Jayden Daniels, fifth-year player, probably going to get day 2 draft capital. Oh, Jalen Hurts also. Jalen Hurts is senior. Like, these guys are seniors. We used to hate seniors at that position, but now, I don't know. I think that I wish I could think of a guy who fits that, who's, having an excellent breakout season in year 4 that we're just kind of forgetting about. But we might need to take a second look at those types of quarterbacks.
Let me correct myself real quick before Chris K comes after me after he listens to this show. JJ McCarthy completed 38% last year. I apologize. This year he's actually completing 62% over 20 yards. Doesn't have nearly the amount of touchdowns and yards, but he is completing 62% of his passes over 20 yards.
I feel like I'm on an island with Jayden Daniels. Like, I just don't see it with him. But I hope I'm wrong. I mean, fun player at the end.
Fun player, elite trait. At least elite trait in his rushing. Austin, you were going to say something before I cut you off.
I was going to say, I think a lot of these guys, it's interesting because if they can throw deep accurate, I am less concerned about them kind of figuring it out, the short and intermediate, if there are issues there. I think the big guy that kind of made me come around on that was Justin Herbert, who I watched really, really struggle on short routes, but he was just so freaking accurate deep. And I'm definitely not comparing Jayden Daniels to Justin Herbert as a passer. I don't even think like the arm talent's in the same stratosphere. But I do think there's something there on some of these guys where you can go and look and just, he's like, the thing is he's throwing deep. He's actually throwing really deep. His ADOT on the 20+ yard passes is actually over 30, and he's not putting the ball in harm's way. PFF has him as one turnover worthy play. I believe that. I've watched a couple of LSU games this year, and he's not just like Jordan Travis to me is the kind of guy where it's not sustainable. He is putting that ball intentionally in harm's way because he knows that he's got Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson there to do that. I don't think that Jayden Daniels is really doing that same exact thing. Like he's doing it a little bit with Brian Thomas. You can kind of find his back shoulder, kind of like Penix does with Adunze pretty much all day. But with some of these passers to Neighbors and some of these other guys, like it's not like he's just throwing 50-50 balls and saying my guy's better than your guy. It's been really, really interesting. And it's fun because, as someone that we all really liked for a few years and then really despised for a few years, I have a really good buddy of mine who we text back and forth all the time. And it was a meme, like how much, Jayden Daniels, this is his week. He's finally going to figure it out this week. And we have this Devy League where you can renounce players and you get like a bonus pick. And he finally did it this year. He's like, I gave up on Jayden Daniels, man. And now Daniels is having this season. So I find players like that really, really fascinating.
I don't think he should win the Heisman, by the way. You got to give it, in my opinion, to either Carson Beck or Michael Penix Jr.
What about Bo Nix?
My personal opinion. Or Bo Nix. Yeah, Bo Nix would be fair also, especially if Oregon, wins the Pac-12 and goes to the playoff. I was going to say something else. I can't remember. All right. We do ourselves a disservice on this show because we are always talking about players before the general public gravitates towards them. So the conversation about Ladd McConkey and Carson Beck, we had that back in July. If we posted a video now about Ladd McConkey and Carson Beck, it would blow up, but it's not going to blow up in July. So to be honest, those conversations kind of become boring in some respects because we had them, and our listeners have heard us have those conversations since the summertime, or if not earlier. With respect to some players, it's earlier than that. But Ladd McConkey, he's cooked some dude this week. Carson Beck is starting to get more momentum publicly. And, Austin, you've kind of changed your tune, at least on one of these guys.
Yeah, I think Beck, for me, the trait that I really like with him is that when you watch some of these quarterbacks get to the back of their drop, there's like this uncertainty. And I think that can be a real killer for quarterbacks. Like, even if they're right and they know what they're seeing, like there's still always kind of like that, do I let it go? Do I trust my guy? Is that spot, is that throw going to be there? And the one thing that I will say about Beck, and I've really appreciated over the past couple of weeks when I've been watching him, is that he doesn't have that at all. And I think generally speaking, he's making good decisions on those kinds of throws. He gets to the back of his drop, that ball gets out, he's throwing darts. And quite frankly, like he's just like I think he's making good decisions and he's being consistent in all those things. And I really, really like that about him. I think, you watch Drew Allar, I think he has that hesitation. I think you watch JJ McCarthy, and a lot of the time he has that hesitation. I watch him, I don't see it at all. I think he's making really smart throws in the flow of his offense. It's not, I don't know. I think I'm starting to really, really come around on him as a legitimate QB. I'm curious if he stays or if he goes, because I think him leaving could create one of the more interesting butterfly effects across college football this year. And I think it's going to be really big for Gunnar Stockton, actually. I think it'd be really big if he leaves for Gunnar Stockton, who can get a year in that offense. And I'm still not ready to jump completely off Gunnar Stockton at this stage. Sorry, Chris.
No, I was just going to say, I think Beck is gone. I thought he's looked excellent as well. He had a really great spring game, and I think what you're seeing now is an extension of that. I think when you saw him early on in game action, that it was a little hit or miss. Like he was just too tentative, which you expect at a first-year starter outside of practice, right? And so I've really liked what I've seen from him as well. And I don't know what his NFL draft ceiling is, but it's certainly higher than Stetson Bennett's. Like, I think he's a substantially better player, like, for this Georgia offense and just, like, evaluation-wise. So I've really liked what I've seen of Carson Beck for sure. He should be a day 2 pick, I think. If Jayden Daniels is a day 2 pick, I think Beck should be too.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's floated up into the round 1 discussion, which is why I think he's gone too. I think especially if the telling thing will be, which I actually think they could lose, is going to be that SEC championship game with them against Alabama. Because if he's able to go and beat them, then he goes into the playoffs. And if he has a couple good games and Georgia's able to do the 3-peat, I do think there will be people talking about him going in the first round. Now, I think he's a much better passer than Stetson Bennett. Remember, Stetson Bennett at this point in time last year was starting to get first-round consideration for everything that he was able to do. So while none of us really believe that, I do think Carson Beck has at least the passing chops to probably get there. I don't think he's a first-round quarterback, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone takes him toward the back end of the first. So I would lean toward him leaving Georgia if that's the talk that he ends up getting.
What do you think about him and Raiola then, Matt? Like, Raiola and Stockton, and I mean, Vandegrift's still there. I think we're all working under the assumption that Vandegrift probably doesn't stay.
Yeah.
I think he probably has to transfer down. He's a Georgia kid, I believe. So, maybe one of those other programs scoops him up.
I mean, I guess if I've said it about Alabama, I have to stick with it on Georgia, although I don't think Raiola is quite as pro-ready as Julian Sayin is, but I just think coaches are going to be more willing to give these guys a shot with it being a 12-team playoff. Georgia knows they can lose 2 games, and they're still probably making the 12-team playoff because of how the rest of their team's going to be. We know that they have a fairly weak schedule again next year. I think they play one of Oklahoma or Texas. They don't play both, so they've got that added on, but they still have a fairly weak schedule next season. I wouldn't be surprised if they just don't go straight to Raiola and we see exactly what he can or can't do as a starting quarterback. That's what I'd love to see. Maybe they don't do it. Maybe they give Gunnar Stockton that shot, but I would lean more toward them going the freshman route. Like I think Alabama will if Milroe comes out and Julian Sayin ends up going there.
They'll bring in somebody before they start. Vandegrift for sure, and I'm not sure Stockton is the guy. But
real quick,
that's my feeling about Stockton.
They are calling Brock Vandegrift something different now, correct?
I don't know. I heard you talk about that, but I didn't see it.
I swear to God, they called him Clay. I swear to God.
What's Muschamp's son is there too, right? What's his first name?
Jackson.
Yeah.
Jackson Muschamp.
Okay, so
yeah,
we're not confusing those guys.
No, they said Clay Vandegrift. I swear the broadcast did. I was like, it just really made me double take for a minute.
Clay and Brock, like how many building materials do you need, dude?
Did you guys talk about McConkey?
We didn't. No.
No, we were waiting for you.
I've said all I needed to say about McConkey. He can play inside and outside. He creates space. He runs after the catch. He is way more athletic than anybody gives him credit for. That includes speed and like quick twitch ability. I don't understand why you all don't like him. Maybe just because he hasn't been quote unquote productive, but he was a 3-star who had to fight his way onto that roster, and he's been injured this year. But when he's been healthy, they constantly go to him for big plays.
I don't know why me saying that I think he's like a fringe day 2 player is me not liking him. I think he's a fine player. I just am not like all the way in like some folks are, but I don't think he's bad. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, is it impossible that he carves out a career like Cooper Kupp, Wells Welker, Julian Edelman, Hunter Renfrow type guy?
Those names sound about white. Realistically, I want to hear Felix just disappeared again. I want to hear he was saying in our chat that he had a comp for Ladd McConkey that was not.
He wasn't
white,
ready to say either.
but he wasn't ready to say. Let's put him on the spot. Let's get him out here.
Until he comes back, the last one he gave us was all those names that Chris Moxley just named. And the big thing with all those is they all had to have systems to make it happen. But he's constantly said he fades wide receivers like that. Like I said, I don't think any of us, I agree with Austin. None of us have said he's a bad player. We've all just said we don't think he's going to go into the NFL and be like a fantasy superstar. He's probably going to be a really good NFL player, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a guy that I'm taking like granted, I guess when Felix propped him up, he wasn't getting a lot of love. So I get Felix's argument on the value of where you got him in drafts and what you're going to end up getting for him getting drafted and going into the NFL. But it's like he's not a guy that I'm just like trading for because granted, yes, the injury has definitely killed his value this year. Like he hasn't produced for you on the college level, and I just don't think he's going to be a massive fantasy producer for you at the NFL level. So I think you're just getting a good wide receiver.
I mean, if you're getting Jordy Nelson seasons out of him, like, are you happy with that?
I mean, Jordy Nelson was a great wide receiver, but I think
yeah, Jordy Nelson was like a wide receiver.
Sorry,
Wait, Chris, what are you doing there?
3 or 4 years in a row. So
Brandon Stokely, Eric Decker, like those types of seasons.
See what you do.
Felix, we want to hear your comp for him. We want to hear your comp.
No.
Come on, we want to hear it.
It's not really a comp. It's just how he moves, how he accelerates and decelerates. There's a player.
You're gonna say AB, aren't you?
That played with J.J. Watt at one point in his career.
That has been my guess as you said that the other day. That was gonna be my guess of your comp.
Who played with played with J.J. Watt in his career near Soaring Eagle Casino. So those are all your clues. That's all I'm going to say.
I knew you liked him. I didn't know that you liked him like Hunter Renfrow.
We actually have AB in our athletic database. I'm just looking at him real quick.
Yeah, and AB he ran like a 4.57 at the combine. Like AB's trait was being able to change directions faster than anyone. Like that was his. And I still don't think that we have a truly great way to measure that at the combine. Sometimes it's the three cone drill, but like even guys like Deontay Johnson, who's really twitchy, they don't always perform that well in those drills. So
I watched that route that McConkey ran. That's like been all over Twitter and everything. And then I went back and watched some more like specific Ladd games. Kind of coming around to the idea that he might be a really.
You just sat here and crapped on him when Felix was gone. What the heck?
Well, yeah, I'm just comparing him to random white dudes. He's just a random wide receiver.
He is not a random.
If he has an Eric Decker career, you're happy with that?
Well, if pretty much any player has an Eric Decker career, I'm probably pretty happy with it.
I mean, Steve Argent. Imagine if he was Steve Argent.
Oh. I'm glad I have him. I hope Ladd McConkey isn't 5'8". That's that, or hopefully he's 5'9.5". Hopefully he's 5'10". But
doesn't
that's
look that
really
short.
my only concern. Yeah, but people say he's smaller than well, Cooper Kupp is who they've been comparing him to, but Cooper Kupp is like 6 foot. If he's 5'10" and a half, I'll be fine. But I don't know. You watch
He's
again.
listed.
So
He's listed 6 foot at Georgia. He looks
listed at
6
6
foot
foot?
to me.
Interesting.
the thing that
I'm
I
not
love
sure
about
how
his
big.
game is sometimes you have receivers who can run routes. Sometimes you have receivers that can return punts. Sometimes you have receivers that can catch back shoulder fades. Sometimes you have receivers that can play slot and play outside. He can do all of those things. Now they didn't complete this pass in the Ole Miss game, but there was a play where they ran a back shoulder fade to him in the goal line, and he almost came up with the catch. So you see him beating somebody, but they trust him on these kind of 50-50 balls too. For a 6 foot 3-star recruit, they do that all the time with him. That's a big deal to me. The fact that he has the body control to stop and come back to the ball is a big deal to me, because I don't think we think of Ladd McConkey that way if you're just box score scouting, but he can do those things. So look, I've had him in my top 20 this entire season. Mike Valerie made fun of me for that, but he's going to end up being a top 50 pick. He's going to end up being a day 2 NFL draft pick. And if he ends up like in the right system, he's going to be the next Mike Fury. How about Mike Fury, Chris?
Oh, it's a throwback.
Wait, I can do this all day. Mike Fury, Ricky Prohl, Ed McCaffrey.
I think his
Wayne
profile
Corbett,
matches similarly to those guys.
Wayne Corbett. Come on, Matt. Get in here. Wayne Corbett. Brian Hartline. How about
I
that?
don't see
Brian
color,
Hartline?
Felix. I don't know what you're talking about. I've got
Brian Hartline. How long could we do this?
I mean, he's got shades of Danny Amendola, but I don't want to say that that's his comp.
Julian Edelman, yeah. We could probably do this for 2 hours with just the Patriots.
Collinsworth.
Chris Collinsworth, of course.
Lance Allworth, if we want to go back.
Bill Schrader. You guys aren't even old enough to remember Bill Schrader.
Nope.
Bill Schrader was a big-time wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. He played with Brett Favre. He had an excellent season one year, and like the Lions always do, they always hire these Trojan horse receivers. They signed Oz Hakeem off the greatest show on turf, and then he was receiver. And then they signed Bill Schrader from the Green Bay Packers, gave him a big contract, and he was just if somebody could look up Bill Schrader's stats for the Lions, I would love to know.
Does his last name have a C?
Yes, it does.
Schroeder.
I'm trying to think of who else, Chris. Who else could we? Hunter Renfrow.
Dwight Clark.
Dwight Clark was a tight end.
So he was still white.
Man,
What about the most famous wide receiver? I don't think anybody's named him yet.
The most famous
star wideout for the Eagles, was it Riley Cooper? Right,
Riley Cooper and Jordan Shipley. Yeah, Riley Cooper and Jordan Shipley, they came out the same draft year. Jordan Shipley for that he either played with Vince Young or Colt McCoy at Texas. But
now we're just bordering on name and just racist.
Do you have his stats, Austin? Do you have his stats?
I
thought somebody was looking him up.
What about Adam Thielen? Did everybody look over Adam Thielen? He's actually been good for the past couple of years.
Bill Schroeder had 304 catches for 4,583 yards and 28 touchdowns.
For the Lions?
And he had a career approximate value. Oh, for the Lions?
Oh, I was going
to. No, for the Lions, there were 2 years. So he went 36, 595, and 5 his first year there, and then we
signed him to a huge contract,
397 and 2.
Yeah,
the year after that, and then he was at Tampa one more year, and then he retired.
The 2 previous years, he went for 918, 999, and then 1,000
with the Packers. Prior. Yeah, he did. I remember we did this with Scott Mitchell, gave him a huge contract. Bill Schrader gave him a huge contract. Oz Hakeem gave him a huge contract. These guys all busted.
It's just the area and the grievances tonight.
And 2 others that we didn't mention, I know we've talked a lot about. What about Scotty Miller and Adam Humphries? There you go.
Oh,
Scotty
I like
Miller
that
from
Scotty Miller
Bowling
count.
from Bowling Green. From Bowling Green, I was a big fan of
Braxton
Scotty.
Berrios,
I
another
still
one?
am a big fan of Scotty Miller.
Me too. I like Scotty Miller.
Okay, I want to. How should we approach this thing? Because I want to be sensitive here. I want to be sensitive here and talk about analytics when it comes to C2C and the players that we should be selecting. Now, full disclosure, we have a group chat, of course. Me, Austin, Chris, and Matt. And I said I wanted to talk about this, and Austin said no, because it would sound like, I don't know, like we were being a-holes or for me to go off on this thing. So how we're going to set this up is I want to talk about this, Austin. And if I'm being an a-hole, you have a buzzer, right? You can just buzz me off. Do you have the buzzer?
Did it play? There it is.
There we go.
I have a buzzer.
There's the buzzer. So am I being an a-hole if I say names? Or do I just have to find out if do I have to go?
You know, you take this wherever direction you want.
Okay. Let me take. I had this conversation with a.
Sorry, I had to. All right, go ahead.
I had this conversation with a friend of mine on Twitter. We were arguing a little bit back and forth, and I guess the conversation started because Chris had posted a video of Lenora Sellers. Lenora Sellers had a 36-yard touchdown against Vanderbilt, and with South Carolina blowing out Vanderbilt. He had another 60-yard touchdown pass against an FCS team earlier, but it was a perfect pass. And Lenora Sellers has been a player that we've highly touted, but he is a 3-star. And the friend who I was talking to, by the way, friend, you ever want to come on this show and support your position? Wide open
Go on his show.
Well, we could. Well, I was told I was not allowed.
Oh, okay.
Wait. Well, he has 2 shows. Listen, I'm not trying. Listen, I'm not. It's not about. It's just this general position on the player. There is this proposition that when it comes to freshman and supplemental drafts, you get to a certain point and you should pass over these 3-stars and get players who only provide or have the potential to provide CFF value. And I think there is a place for analytics in what we do. There's a place in analytics for everything that we do to help us make decisions, but including or eliminating players based on numbers alone without consideration of the player's talent profile, in my opinion, it's just lazy. It's lazy. Okay. I'll tone it down. I think it amounts to a post hoc analysis saying that, well, what happened before, it will happen in the future. It amounts to, okay, this is a 5-star player going to Alabama. You should draft them. It doesn't matter if it's Kamar Wheaton. It doesn't matter if it's Emmanuel Henderson. It doesn't matter if it's Raleek Brown. If they went to this prestigious high school, if they were the number 1 back in the class and they committed to USC, then, that is, from an analytical perspective, that is who some people would tout that you take. But it gives no consideration at all to that individual's talent profile. This is the conversation that we were having about Lenora Sellers. The strict analytical inquiry and the consideration of those numbers as a dispositive approach to evaluation would prevent you from discovering Lenora Sellers. It would prevent you from discovering Aiden Childs. It would prevent you from discovering Michael Penix Jr. or Anthony Richardson or Ramondre Stevenson coming out of JUCO. I mean, Raheem Sanders, Devin Neal. There are all of these guys who come from non-traditional places or have a path less traveled, and so they might not have the stars next to their name. They may not have their production, and they are being just systematically eliminated from the conversation by certain evaluation approaches. And I have a problem with that. I think that, again, it's post hoc because it happened before. It's going to happen in the future. Even Quinshon Judkins, that approach to evaluation, you have zero chance at hitting or finding a player like Quinshon Judkins coming out of high school because he's a 3-star going to a non-traditional school in Ole Miss. So you just pass on him. So yeah, I have a problem with that approach, saying if these players, if they don't hit certain buckets, we don't have space for them. I think if we were to compare this to make a real world example, it's like, all right, I'm hiring for a position and I'm going to hire people from Yale and Harvard. And I'm not even going to interview them. I'm not even going to see if they fit with our culture, if they actually have practical skills. I'm just going to hire them straight out of those two schools. And that's only those are the only two if you're going to get that position, you have to have went to one of those schools. And I'm going to hire them without interviewing them. If you went to community college, out of here. If you went to, you worked after high school and got a real job, get out of here. That is my perception of this, quote, analytical approach, is that it gives zero consideration to an individual's talent profile. And let's say hypothetically that you're going to go, oh, well, I'm just going to opt for CFF players. Well, then who are you going to take? Because is it Rasheen Ali? Is it Aronde Gadsden? Is it there are so many CFF players. Is Samson Evans from Michigan State? There's like 3 different players from Ohio. Curtis Rourke, Saban Gore, Sam Wigloose, all have been unusable this year in C2C leagues. So I have a problem when we just eliminate an entire section of players without considering their individual talent profiles. That's it. That's my speech. That's my spiel. I think I did. I only got one buzzer there, Austin. I only got one.
I'm proud of you.
And everybody's here, sitting here, shaking their heads, agreeing with me because what I said was prophetic. That's why there are no rebuttals. So
I think of everyone here, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong. I rely on data to inform decisions more than y'all do. I think if you want to be right more often than not, and you want to be efficient, I think you should take the approach of analytics and rule out guys like Lenore Sellers. I think you're going to be right way more often than not than trying to find these outliers. I am a Lenore Sellers fan. I understand the risk in that evaluation, and I don't think that I'm necessarily smarter than anybody else. I think that he was a player who I identified, and I think we identified that can be really good. Logic, numbers, etc. tell me that that's probably a bad bet. And over time, it's probably going to prove to be a bad bet when we had tried to handpick these 3-star quarterbacks, handpick these players who are outliers at their position, etc. If you're right, it's great. But the more often that you try to buck the trend, or the more often that you try to say, I think I can beat the historical system, the more often you're probably going to be wrong. So I understand this approach as a holistic, easy to identify, right more often than not approach. I do think there is a place for nuance, but I also understand just saying, like, I'm not gonna touch it because, like, these players don't hit, and the one in 50 that do, not gonna try to guess who that is. Like, it makes sense to me.
It's not a one-way. It's not a one-way transaction here, though, where I'm saying, because that same approach would have you draft Kamar Wheaton, it would have you draft Raleek Brown, it would have you draft Emmanuel Henderson. All players that we faded, even.
It's easier to do at the top to fade than it is to try to identify outliers. Like when it's much easier to identify outliers at the top for certain qualities than it is to like how many 3-star quarterbacks are there? Like 100? Maybe not that many, like 50, 75 versus like a handful of 5 stars where you can easily nitpick them. It's easier to identify outliers at the top than it is outliers further down. And so, yes, the approach on aggregate is the wrong approach. I agree with you. I think that just saying I'm going to take 5 stars, totally ignore 4 stars, 3 stars is a bad strategy. And I think that if you are doing that blindly, you're going to fail. However, it's much easier to identify outliers at the top. And I think that we have done a good job of doing that as a company. And I think most people have kind of figured out what traits to look for. So I don't want to totally write off this approach because I'm mostly in the analytical side of this, but there is nuance involved. I don't want to also discount that.
Is it much easier to pick out guys at the top though? Because I'm looking at the top rated quarterbacks and I mean, I disagree with you, Austin. You're shaking your head. Yes, but I'll just look at 21 in general. Okay, we've had 2 of those guys succeed in the top 10. Caleb Williams and Drake May did technically.
No, he's saying it's easier to pick out the bad outliers at the top, which I do think it is because there are certain traits that lack.
That's where I'm saying I actually disagree with that statement. Because, yes, okay, we all said that most of us here said Brock Vandagriff wasn't going to be good. But you know what? Whether it was just me, we talked about Sam Heward maybe taking over that Washington team and being pretty good. We talked up Kyle McCord. I'm not saying you did, Felix, but you did talk up Brock Vandagriff. My point is someone at this company talked one of these players up. Ty Thompson was talked up. Jackson Dart was talked up. Tyler Buckner was talked up. Garrett Nussmeier's been talked up. Where did all those guys go? Where are they? What are they doing? Nothing. None of them have been overly successful. Okay, here, let's go to the 2022 class really quick while I'm sitting here. Oh, Quinn Ewers was also in the 21-1 class. That not worked out for really anybody. How's Cade Klubnik doing? Yeah, that ain't really working out. Connor Wigman, okay, before he got injured. That's fine. Ty Simpson, how's that working for everybody? The 5-star that everybody was betting on was going to be the guy. Drew Allar, he's been okay. Now, granted, Walker Howard, a guy we weren't on, hasn't done anything. How's Devin Brown doing? How's Gunnar Stockton doing? How's Sam Horn doing? How's Nick Evers doing? I do not think it's as easy picking them out of the top. Now, I'm saying maybe it's easier to find those guys who aren't going to succeed at the top because it's more limited, which I guess is the argument you're making, Mox. I get that part of it. Yes. But I also think going to what Felix always talks about with the value, you're not having to take as big a risk on those 3-star quarterbacks in your draft. So you are on these guys. So if you don't hit right, if you did take Cade Klubnik early on and he didn't pan out for you, it's worse for your team than taking those 3-star quarterbacks like a Norris Sellers in whatever round you're taking him, because most players who follow that analytical approach don't believe he's going to pan out. So you end up getting those values in the Anthony Richardsons of the world, the Zach Wilsons of the world, the Michael Penix that Felix is talking about. You end up hitting on those guys because you're taking a chance on them and instead of just saying, like Felix said, I'm going to go get the Saban Gurus, all these CFF guys who may end up not panning out for you either. So I do think there is a
even like Lou Nichols last year, like Lou Nichols the year prior. I mean, he almost had 2,000 yards rushing. Could be misremembering, and then busted last year.
Like I don't get me started on CFF players.
I don't want to say that you should fade analytics altogether, or you should fade valuing what the player brings to the table. Like you could tell Lenora Sellers with the traits that he had could be something if he ends up at the right place. Like I think there is a balanced approach to it. And I think that's where, though, I agree with Felix's argument, is it sounds like when some of the people come in on the analytics side, like Mox, I know you don't do that, but some of the people who come in on the analytics side,
they just say he went to South Carolina, he's out.
Exactly.
He went to Florida, he's out. He went to Vanderbilt, he's
analysis out. Altogether. I think that's a bad approach to take personally. I do not think there's anything wrong with going in and saying, okay, hey, because 3-star quarterbacks rarely hit, I'm not going to take, maybe I'll take a shot on 2 that I think could do something, or 1 at a certain point. But to fade them all together just because they rarely pan out, I think to me personally is a bad strategy. I do not think that will work out for you in the long term.
I agree.
I actually think this is the completely wrong discussion on this. I think a lot more of the time it comes down for me to, and I know this is what we're going to talk about if we're trying to fix last week's mock at some point here this evening, roster construction and how well we can project whether a player is going to maintain value over the next year. I don't necessarily care about gain. I mean, gain value is great. I really hate lose value. I'm going to try to avoid those guys. I think that's actually how you should frame the conversation. And I think that's the direction that I would take this. And there are times
So
where I think
Austin, put that in the context of Lenore Sellers or Quinshon Judkins. If you could put on blindfolders and go back in time to when we touted those, or Raheem Sanders, by the way, how put that what you're saying in the context of those player selections.
Yeah, so it's really tough because I think in some leagues last year I ended up with one of Aiden Childs or Lenore Sellers, never both. I checked before tonight's show because I think taking both was probably not particularly smart. I think you kind of had to, the way you're structuring a roster, you just can't have a bunch of unknown 3-star quarterbacks, even if we like them on the team. But I think a lot of it depends, like, do I have all my picks? How good is my team? How bad is my team? Do I have a lot of other quarterbacks on my roster? What's the rest of the class look like? Last year, I was more inclined to take Childs or Sellers. If I didn't end up with one of the big five and I went a different direction with my early pick, I took CJ Baxter. I took Jonte Cook. I took Deuce Robinson. I took Cornell Tate. I took Brandon Innes, whoever, and there was a different pick. I think a lot of those things matter a lot more. I know for me personally, I think there is a fine line between having too many zeros on your bench and missing out on the opportunity cost to acquire some of these players. I definitely think that's a big discussion that you can have. That's like way too big to just have in the context of what we're speaking on here tonight. So I think there are a lot of different things that kind of play into this. And quite frankly, the way I play C2C, I don't mind a few more zeros on my bench because it helps me figure out if my team's actually good or not by like week 3. And I can start making decisions for next year really, really early in the year. I think generally speaking, that benefits me pretty greatly across my leagues. So there's like, this is not like one discussion. I think there's like 8 different things that feed into this. Moral of the story, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong way. I do think the way I play C2C is the best way personally, just because that's the way I play it. I think I would be doing a disservice by giving advice to people if I didn't think that the way that I play C2C is the best. But I think there are a lot of factors here that come into play.
No notes. I actually think Austin said it really well about how to value these types of players.
All right. Let's get out of here, or eventually get out of here, with fixing the mock draft from last week. Now, Austin was not here, and he's laughing. Austin was not here, but me, Matt, and Chris did a mock draft. And I'm just going to go through those 48 picks really, really quick. And Austin, we'll get your reaction, and then we'll do what we need to do to fix it. I've made some changes myself. In here, these were the players in order. Luther Burden, Evan Stewart, Zachariah Branch, Quinshon Judkins, Cedric Baxter, Deuce Robinson, Carnell Tate, Nicholas Singleton, Justice Haynes, Connor Wegman, Jonte Cook, Amarian Hampton. That was round 1. Then Tetaroa McMillan, Drew Allar, Malachi Nelson, Jackson Arnold, Aiden Childs, Arch Manning, Eugene Wilson, Micah Hudson, the freshman, Dylan Royola, another freshman, Ashton Genty, Dante Moore, Julian Sayin, freshman, Jeremiah Smith, freshman, Brandon Ennis, Katron Allen, Nicholas Iamalieva, Luke Cromanhook, Lenore Sellers, Mylan Graham, Barian Brown, Jackson Dart, DJ Lagway, Travis Hunter, Squirrel White, Caden Fegan, Roderick Robinson, Ollie Gordon, Luke Lachey, Dallin Hayden, Cade Klubnik, Shador Sanders, Cameron Selden, Caleb Jackson, Antonio Williams, Isaiah Bond, Makai Lemon. If you're counting at home, yes, I only said the first round because I couldn't do multiples of 12 thereafter on the fly to tell you what the second and third and
Public
rounds
school,
were.
man. Public
So, public school. Austin, what was your? I mean, you laughed when I said you got to fix this from last year. What was your take?
Yeah, I did listen to the show, and I think you guys highlighted a lot of kind of the questionable decisions that happened, especially early. You guys circled Deuce Robinson as probably a little bit of a stretch, although I don't know that he's like as much of a stretch as maybe some folks wanted us to believe. I do think there's a real case for him to be the wide receiver 4 in next year's class. So in that grouping, not terribly offensive. The Amari and Hampton pick was really bad. There's one name actually though that you guys didn't really talk on. Well, there's actually a couple here that I think, and like I said, my draft approach, especially early, is basically not player specific at all. It's just, what are the odds this player loses value? What are the odds this player maintains value? What are the odds this player gains value? And I think one of the ways that we've talked about in the past where players maintain value is that they don't play. Like that is, it sounds stupid and counterintuitive, but like a freshman, Dante Moore probably has lost value this year. And we did talk about that in the context of this quarterback class, that if Dante Moore plays and he doesn't look amazing, that probably hurts his value. Whose value probably hasn't really gone down? Nico, Jackson Arnold, Malachi Nelson, Arch, like all these guys, just because they haven't played. So I think that's a big way. And I think I would actually maybe slot one or two extra freshmen in this grouping overall, because I think, again, just the value, the players and advantageous positions going to schools that we know produce the talent, and there's a pathway there. Guys like Quentin Martin, my top running back in next year's class, is going to Penn State. I would absolutely put him in this group. Like, you're telling people there's the next Penn State running back who already weighs 200-something pounds, is probably the best receiving back in the class. Like, gimme. There's a David Ezimume who's going to Clemson. A real chance that Will Shipley and Phil Moffitt don't play there for more than a year max. I think that's like a really good spot. That's just value that sits there for a while. And there were a couple players that conversely that I think just are guaranteed to almost lose value next year in this grouping. I think Ashton Jeanty is guaranteed to lose value next year. Guaranteed to lose value, because he's not going to be at Boise State, and I don't think he's a legitimate NFL player. I think Barry Brown probably loses value next year. What's his quarterback going to be? What's Kentucky going to be? I would not touch him in the first 3 rounds of a draft. I think Fegan, if that goes back to a split backfield, I think you're losing value there at Illinois. Luke Lachey, I don't really know what that pick was.
Felix is fighting for his life right now.
So there are definitely some spots in here where I'm just like looking, I'm saying, like, I don't think that player is going to hold their value. Like I just looking at some of these guys, and it matters a little less for me at running back, because I think we only need 1 year out of them. So those are some of the picks. And Brandon Innes he's going to be year 1-0. Why are we taking Brandon Innes at pick 26?
That was not my pick. So I
had to. I don't remember. I actually don't remember who. It had to have been Matt's. Had to have been.
It was mine. I picked him.
Well, Austin sitting here. You know what? It's hard to do these drafts while you're sitting here talking. Like, you don't have a queue set up. You're not dialed into, the next pick and who your guy's going to be. I'll tell you some changes that you liked your draft, Chris.
Yeah, I thought
Well, you went with your freshman heavy approach.
Yeah. Right approach.
Yeah. A couple of changes that I made. Let's see. So I did drop Amari and Hampton. I dropped him to 19, just in front of Eugene Wilson, behind Arch Manning. Well, actually, let me start at the top. Carnell Tate, I think, should have gone behind in front of Deuce Robinson. I did take Deuce Robinson, and I still. By the way, for anybody who's not paying attention, Deuce Robinson has increased his snaps the last 3 weeks or so, and is like playing on an equal level with Brennan Rice and Dorian Singer. So he had 2 catches for 46 yards, I think, against Oregon. He should have had a touchdown against Washington. He dropped a touchdown against Washington. He's a big boy who can move really, really fast for that size, and I just like that type of play. So I don't care. I'll be out on an island on Deuce Robinson. I got him everywhere. And Nicholas Iamaleava, Chris took him. When I think about it, his skill set for Josh Heupel's system is like perfect. I moved him up to 17. Let's see. He was taken at 28 in the first draft. I moved him up to 17. What's another one? Katron Allen. I took Katron Allen at did I take Katron Allen? No, I think I did. I took Katron Allen. I took Katron Allen way too early. I moved him to the end of the draft, basically saying, he probably shouldn't have been taken there at all. And if we did this 2 more times, this draft would tighten up a little bit. So those are some changes I would make. And we'll do this again in a month or 2.
I will also toss out, I think for players like Hampton and Ollie Gordon, who also was in this group, like they broke out year 2, but I think when we look at them, maybe not all of us, and I feel like you are kind of high on Hampton in terms of getting to the NFL and being a quality player there. But I think with guys that I think there are some questionable skill sets in terms of what they're going to be in the NFL, I actually don't want to draft Amarian Hampton or Ollie Gordon this year. I want to try to figure out which sophomore is going to be Ollie Gordon, Amarian Hampton next year. And I'm looking at backfields that probably are going to have some opportunity. We'll see what happens in the portal. That have, a pretty good athletic skill set. And like Caleb Jackson's one of my favorites. You guys mentioned it when you were doing it. He's in here. There are a couple other guys that I've been considering as potentially maybe that next guy. But I think like at some point, some of those guys, like they just are going to end up being overdrafted for what they are, which is like a 3rd or 4th round NFL draft pick, when I can just attempt later to figure out who that guy is going to be. And Caleb Jackson's an expensive example. There are other cheap examples, I think, out there that you could also consider.
Caleb Jackson went pick 45 in our original draft.
Yeah. Like Jordan James could be one. He didn't go anywhere in this 48. If Bucky Irving leaves, he could very well be that guy. That's just one name that just came to my mind as I'm sitting here. There are certainly other ones out there.
One name that we didn't mention, and I realized after the fact, Ruben Owen should have gone.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize he isn't in there. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he certainly should have gone. I took Ollie Gordon at 39 just because I felt like it was value at that point, but kind of agree. Ollie Gordon he would succeed in the Shanahan type offense. I think that's his role. I really do. He bounces a lot of stuff outside. He needs like that sort of scheme. I also don't like how he has like a 40-inch inseam. Like dude's all hips, long legs. It's just a weird profile.
His lower legs are real small too. Like that, yeah, I have that as my first note on his freshman tape. Is like,
yeah, he's what's the SpongeBob when he takes Pearl to the dance?
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
that's what Ollie Gordon looks like.
Okay, we've lost Matthew. We've probably lost a lot of you. Drop us a 5-star rating review. Go ahead and like the video. If you made it this far, can you send one of us a DM and say you made it to the end of the show? Because this might set the record for the longest Devy debate. And deservedly so, because there was a lot to cover. All right, that is going to be our show for tonight. Apologies to Kirk Herbstreit. We ran out of time. We'll get him rescheduled soon for Austin Nace, Chris Moxley, and Matt Bruning. I'm Felix Sharp. Good night and good luck.